Hello, Cohort M. Thank you so very much for taking the time to listen to my video, Agency Theory and Population Ecology Theory. Organizational theories involves a set of concepts or constructs that are related to each other, and they explain how individuals behave in social units that we call organizations. Before I tell you about agency theory, I want to give you a little background. In the 1960s and 70s, economists explored risk sharing among individuals or groups. However, two Rochester, New York professors, one was the dean and the other a professor, William Meckling and Michael Jensen, expanded and broadened that risk sharing literature to include the so-called agency problems that occur when cooperating parties have different goals and divisions of labor. And that is what we now know as the agency theory. And what that theory says is it pertains to the relationship between two parties. The first is the principal or the principals, and the second is the agent or the agents who are engaged as employees or independent contractors. Agency theory is directed at the ever-present agency relationship in which one party, which is the principal, delegates work to another who is the agent who performs the work that the principal either can't or doesn't want to. Agency theory attempts to describe this relationship using the metaphor of a contract. They also call it the firm. And the agency theory is concerned with resolving two problems that can occur in agency relationships. The first is the agency problem that arises when one, the desire or goals of the principal or the agent conflicts, or it is difficult or expensive for the principal to verify what the agent is actually doing. And when I think about that, it takes me to my employer, and I'd like to compare Duval County Public Schools' current security system in the agency theory model. Prior to 2010, security for the school was offered through the city of Jacksonville, where I live, Jacksonville, Florida. Off-duty police officers worked extra shifts for pay. The sheriff's office used all of their equipment, from cars to guns to bully sticks to handcuffs, and there was those things came at a cost. That cost was $4.2 million annually that the school system paid to our local sheriff's office. However, in 2010, our then superintendent, Ed Pratt Daniel, came up with the idea that Duval County Public Schools should establish its own full model police department. So we no longer need the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office off-duty employees, and it saves $1 million. That's amazing. A whopping $1 million, because the cost to run our own police department only costs $3 million a year. So in the agency theory model, we see that that was a benefit when we thought about, do you want someone else to do a job that you can't do when really you can if you find the right people? The biblical worldview that I think about when I look at that comes from Mark chapter 28, verses 28 through 31. And that reads, "And one of the scribes came, and having heard them reasoning together, and perceiving that he had answered them well, asked him, Which is the first commandment of all? And Jesus answered him, The first of all the commandments is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one God, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind, and with all thy strength. And this is the first commandment." And then verse 31 says, "And the second is like, namely this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. There is none other commandment greater than these." At the end of the day, we need to love like Jesus loved, because love covers a multitude of sins. My next theory that I'd like to talk about is population ecology theory, and that is the study of how people interact with their environment. Aspects of the population ecology theory that we will talk about is metapopulation. And metapopulation is the study of how groups come together from different regions at a particular time to conduct business. So we could say that happens during regional or annual meetings that organizations have. Ecologists also describe the origins of population in something called distribution of the population. That is the total area of population that is covered. The abundance of a population is the number of individuals within that population. And they also talk about density. That means the number of people in a particular square unit of space. We also can study people by age, sex ratio, and also origins. There's the immigrant and the immigrant. If my family was originally from West Africa, then we are immigrants with an E from West Africa, but we are now Americans, so we are immigrants of America. And when you study people, they also sometimes look at their immigrant or emigrant status. Elements of the population to consider are variation, which is the large number of variations appear in the population of organization, or selection. Some organizations find a niche and they survive. And then there's also retention. But let's look at this model broken down in another way. Organizations within an ecological niche are competitively interdependent and they compete for survival. We see that a lot in education. That's my field. So we should study how some of those organizations survive, either with their variation, their selection, their retention, and then at the end of the day, operating at the level that the environment that the organization is in requires. So let me look and compare that to Duval County Public Schools. When I think about the population theory and DCPS, I look at how DCPS has addressed the needs of the population within the community. Unfortunately, there are a lot of students that come to school and they don't have the means for resources outside of the school. So I have to say, believe it or not, you see here Agape Community Health. That is an organization that is now beginning to set up health clinics in our schools, and I mean literally right down to women's health. Young girls will be able to go in and have their personal private annual exams right at school. We have other organizations called Communities in Schools, Children in Home Society, Boys and Girls Clubs, and these are just to name a few. These are external agencies that have space within the walls of the school. They are there during the school hours to address the needs of the students. When I look at this from a biblical worldview, it takes me right back to the Genesis of it all, 1:28. Which basically says God told us to be fruitful and multiply. And sometimes man is always busy trying to manage the numbers of people. But if God said be fruitful and multiply, then that means he's going to give us everything we need to survive. Therefore, we should be obedient because it yields great gains. And also God cares for the lilies of the field. So why would he not care for the abundance of people that are being populated throughout the world? I want to share this, give you just 30 seconds. This is a little known fact that I discovered while conducting research for this PowerPoint. The very first public school in the state of Florida, I'm going to repeat that, the very first public school in the state of Florida was established in Jacksonville in 1864, and it was the Stanton Normal School. You'd have to be from Jacksonville to be moved by that little known fact, because this school is still standing today. My father-in-law graduated from not Stanton Normal, but Old Stanton. I have a nephew who graduated in 2003 from Stanton College Preparatory School. I'm only adding this caveat to say that when we have organizations that are of importance, that meet the needs of the community, we have to be willing to do everything we can for them to perpetuate, to last, to survive, and our communities. So I want to just leave you with a blessing from Numbers chapter 6, verses 24 through 26, which is one of my favorite. I want to thank you for listening to my presentation to the end, and I want to ask the Lord to bless and keep you, and that may he make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you, and that the Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Thank you so very much. My references have been added for your convenience. Thank you and have a great day. Bye-bye.